The moment you begin to pull away, it doesn't register as a seismic event. It's not a dramatic slam of a door, but the faint, almost imperceptible click of a latch disengaging. At first, she doesn't panic. There is no sharp intake of breath, no sudden chill of dread. In fact, the initial response is often one of quiet satisfaction, a soothing narrative she constructs to protect her ego and maintain a sense of control. She tells herself it's fine, that you're just busy with work, with friends, with the mundane demands of a life that for a while seemed to orbit around her. She might even feel a slight triumphant ego boost, a whisper in her mind that says, "Good, I've got him right where I want him. This gives me a little breathing room." This is the story she consciously chooses to believe, a performance she puts on for the most important audience of all, herself. But beneath this carefully curated surface of nonchalance, in the deeper, instinctual layers of her psyche, a subtle and unwelcome signal is being detected. Women are not just participants in relationships. They are emotional radar systems, constantly scanning the environment for shifts in energy, tone, and rhythm. They are attuned to the unspoken music of a connection, the cadence of your texts, the warmth in your voice, the specific quality of your attention when you are fully present with them. This is a language far more fluent and truthful than words. So when your energy shifts, she feels it. It's not something she can articulate in a text message or a conversation with a friend. It's a visceral sensation. It's the sudden silence that feels different from a comfortable quiet. It's the absence of those little, seemingly insignificant texts that used to arrive like clockwork, the "hope you're having a good day" message, the funny meme that reminded you of her, the simple thinking of you that acted as an emotional touch point throughout her day. Their disappearance doesn't just create an empty space on her phone screen. It creates a subtle void in her emotional landscape. These small gestures were the steady pulse of the connection. And now that pulse has become irregular, faint. This change registers on a level deeper than conscious thought. It's a primal alert. She won't admit it, not even in the private sanctum of her own mind, because to acknowledge it would be to surrender the narrative of control she is so desperately clinging to. But a small, insistent part of her awareness, the part that operates on pure intuition, goes on high alert. It whispers a single troubling word: wait. This is followed by a question that feels more like a tremor. Something's changed. That change, that subtle but undeniable emptiness where your consistent presence once was, is the first crack in the foundation of her emotional certainty. For so long, she operated from a place of assumed security, a knowledge that your attention was a constant, a reliable resource she could draw upon. She knew its shape, its weight, its availability. Now that constant has become a variable. The ground beneath her, which she believed was solid, now has a hairline fracture. It is not yet a chasm, but its very existence is threatening. It introduces the concept of instability into a dynamic she believed was predictable. This initial phase is a silent battle between her ego and her intuition. Her ego, the master storyteller, works overtime to plaster over the crack with rationalizations. He's just under pressure, it assures her. This is actually better. I was feeling a little smothered. It paints your withdrawal as a convenience, a welcome respite. But her intuition, the quiet observer, doesn't deal in stories. It deals in facts of feeling. It feels the chill in the energy. It notes the change in the rhythm. It senses the withdrawal of your emotional focus, the dissonance between what she consciously tells herself and what she subconsciously feels creates a low hum of anxiety. It's a background noise she can't quite silence. She might find herself checking her phone a little more often, not with the frantic desperation that may come later, but with a faint, questioning curiosity. She might replay your last few interactions, searching for a clue she didn't know she was supposed to be looking for. Did his tone seem different? Was he distracted? The seed of doubt has been planted, and though she tries to ignore it, it has taken root in the fertile soil of her uncertainty. This is the fragile, quiet beginning of the entire process. The moment the anchor she didn't even know she relied upon begins, ever so slightly, to drag. The initial, quiet unease is no longer enough. The subtle crack in her certainty has now widened into a fissure that her ego can no longer ignore. This is the stage where the internal conflict escalates from a whisper to a shout. And in response, she moves from passive sensing to active performance. The quiet questioning of what's happening transforms into a determined "I will control what's happening." This is not a stage of genuine moving on. It is a theater of war where the battlefield is perception, and the weapon is her curated image. Her ego, feeling threatened by the growing silence, kicks into high gear. It cannot and will not allow her to sit passively in the discomfort of your withdrawal. To simply sit and wonder about you is to grant you power, to admit that your actions have a direct effect on her emotional state. This is an unacceptable position for the ego, which thrives on a sense of control and superiority. So, it constructs a new, more aggressive narrative. Not only is she fine, but she is better than fine. She is thriving. This is where the digital stage becomes her primary tool. She will post something online, a glowing selfie taken from her most flattering angle, a vague caption about good vibes only, a story at a social event filled with laughter, or a quote about knowing your worth and healing in private. The content is versatile, but the subtext is always the same. Look at me. I am unbothered, I am happy, and I am moving forward. With or without you. Crucially, this performance is not for her general followers. It is a carefully crafted production with a single target audience: you. Every like, every comment from her friends is merely part of the set dressing. She is orchestrating a reaction. This is a test, a probe sent into the silent void you have created to see if her emotional gravity still holds power over you. She is checking the integrity of the connection by applying pressure. If you react if you like the post, view the story instantly, or, most tellingly, send a message the test is a success. The silence is broken. She knows she still has you emotionally. The hook is still set. Your reaction, however small, is the reassurance her ego craves, proving that your withdrawal was a temporary glitch, not a fundamental shift. But if you remain quiet, composed, and still, the performance begins to feel hollow. The applause of her followers does nothing to fill the silence coming from your corner. This is the moment the strategy backfires. Your non-reaction is a louder, more powerful message than any argument or plea could ever be. It communicates a simple, devastating truth. The performance did not work. The illusion of control she was so carefully building begins to crumble at the edges. Suddenly, the power she thought she wielded feels intangible. It's fragile and possibly non-existent. This is where the obsessive monitoring begins. It is no longer a casual glance at her phone. It becomes a ritual. She will check and recheck if you've seen her story, her heart dropping a little each time she sees your name absent from the viewer list. She will scrutinize her own likes, wondering why yours is missing. The digital world, once a playground for her validation, becomes a source of anxiety. The metrics of attention become the metrics of her worth in your eyes, and the numbers are not adding up. The more her ego insists, "I don't care," the more her mind, almost against her will, loops back to you. It's a psychological trap. The conscious effort to suppress a thought only gives it more energy. Don't think about the pink elephant, and suddenly, the pink elephant is all you can see. In trying to prove she doesn't care, she is forced to constantly engage with the source of the supposed non-caring you. Your silence becomes the central character in her internal monologue. Your lack of reaction is no longer an absence. It is an active, pervasive presence in her mind. It is a question mark hanging over every other thought. This stage is a critical turning point. It marks the transition from you being the one who is potentially losing to her being the one who is actively risking loss. She has thrown her best punch, the display of her desirability and independence, and you have not flinched. You have not acknowledged the punch was even thrown. This creates a profound cognitive dissonance. The woman who felt securely in the driver's seat is now staring at an unresponsive steering wheel, and the road ahead suddenly looks unfamiliar and frightening. The performance was meant to be a shield, but your silence has turned it into a mirror. and she is starting to get an uncomfortable glimpse of her own investment. The curtain is still up on her show, but she is beginning to fear she is performing to an empty house. The performance has failed. The curated posts have not drawn you out. The displays of indifference have been met with a deeper, profound indifference, and the digital tests have returned no data. The ego, having exhausted its primary strategies, now begins to retreat, and in its wake, a more raw and turbulent set of emotions is unleashed. This is the stage of the great unraveling, where the conflict ceases to be an external performance and becomes a full-scale internal civil war. The quiet anxiety morphs into a storm of conflicting feelings, and in this storm, something unexpected and counterintuitive is born, a genuine, piercing curiosity that is the very engine of attraction. As the days accumulate into a pattern of your sustained silence, her emotions are no longer just confused. They are at war with one another. One faction, led by wounded pride, feels a hot, sharp anger. How dare he ignore me? It seethes. This anger is a protective mechanism, a final fortress for the ego. It feels powerful, righteous. It composes texts in her mind that she will never send accusatory, sarcastic, designed to punish you for your audacity. This anger is familiar territory. It is a response to a perceived injustice, a slight against her value. But another, more unsettling feeling begins to whisper beneath the anger, something she can't quite name at first. It is a cold, fluttering sensation in the pit of her stomach, anxiety. This is the crucial pivot of the entire dynamic. When a man pulls away with bitterness, with arguments, or with visible pain, it is still a form of engagement. It is a reaction to her. It confirms her power. But when he pulls away without a word, without blame, without any visible emotional charge, it cannot be easily categorized as rejection. The female psyche interprets it differently. It interprets it as change. You are not reacting to her. You are simply acting from a new, unknown place. You have become a variable where there was once a constant. This is when the questions begin to spiral. And they are no longer about what she did wrong, but about you. What is he doing that is more important than thinking of me? Who is he with? What has captured his focus so completely that I have faded from his foreground? Your silence becomes a blank screen onto which her imagination projects 1,000 scenarios. You are not the sullen, rejected man she might have expected. You have transformed into a man of mystery, of purpose, separate from her. This is profoundly disorienting, and for the feminine mind, which craves emotional clarity and narrative, this disorientation is intolerable. Yet, it is also irresistibly intriguing. This confusion is the fertile ground where the seed of genuine attraction is replanted. For women, predictability is comfortable, but mystery is magnetic. You are no longer the man whose responses she could anticipate, whose attention she could count on. You have reintroduced the unknown, and nothing intensifies emotion. Nothing fuels obsessive thought, like a mystery that needs solving. Your silence has stopped being an absence and has started being a question, and she is becoming consumed with finding the answer. It is at this point that her mind, in its search for answers, begins a process of emotional rewiring. This is not a conscious choice. It is a psychological defense against the pain of your perceived loss. Her brain, seeking comfort, selectively rewinds the past. It doesn't linger on the arguments, the boredom, or your flaws, the very reasons she may have justified creating distance in the first place. Instead, it highlights the good moments. It plays a curated montage of the warmth, the laughter, the deep conversations, the feeling of being understood and cherished. The human mind has a cruel and powerful habit. It romanticizes what it can no longer reach. Since you are now emotionally unavailable, you become an idealized figure. The mundane is polished into the magical. The ordinary becomes extraordinary in hindsight. But here lies the most profound twist. She doesn't just miss you. Not entirely. What she truly begins to ache for is the version of herself that existed in the reflection of your presence. She misses the woman who felt seen, who felt centered, who felt exciting and alive when she was with you. Your consistent attention and energy acted as a mirror reflecting her best self back at her. Now, with that mirror gone, she is left with a silence that doesn't reflect anything at all. She feels the void not just as your absence, but as the absence of that particular elevated version of her own identity. The quiet introspection and dawning realization of Chapter 3 are now untenable. To sit with those feelings, the genuine missing, the idealization, the curiosity would be to surrender. To admit a vulnerability that her pride finds absolutely unacceptable. And so, the internal conflict escalates once more, not into performance, but into a full-scale internal war where her ego makes its last, most desperate stand. This is the stage of the great defiance, where the louder she proclaims her freedom. From you, the more profoundly she reveals her entanglement. The emotional disguise becomes more elaborate, more aggressive, and more transparent all at once. Her ego, feeling the gravitational pull of your silence and the threat of her own growing feelings, will not go down without a fight. It cannot allow her to simply sit and miss you. That would be a defeat. So, it orchestrates a powerful, defiant counteroffensive. She will double down on acting cold, indifferent, and completely moved on. This is where the digital theater becomes a stage for a more pointed drama. Deliberately ignore a text from you that is days old, not out of genuine disinterest, but to create a parallel silence. A mimicry of your power that she hopes will sting. She might post a picture with another Gaia, carefully curated shot where the body. Language is ambiguous enough to suggest intimacy, but deniable if questioned. The caption will be light, fun, but the subtext is a direct challenge. See, I am replaceable, and so are you. My world is full of exciting options, and you are fading into irrelevance. But you must understand the critical psychology behind this escalation. The louder and more dramatic the performance of indifference, the deeper and more frantic the feeling of attachment truly is. This is the paradox that reveals everything. When a woman genuinely does not care, she doesn't perform. She simply disappears. She becomes quiet. Her energy withdraws completely, and she moves on without a backward glance or a need to prove anything. There are no announcements, no strategic posts, no public displays of moving on. Silence in that case is genuine closure. However, when she cares deeply, but her pride is too vast to ever let her admit it, she performs. New beginnings. Every story at a party showing her laughing a little too heartily. Every new distraction she flaunts it is all an emotional disguise, a smokescreen to hide the internal inferno. She is not trying to convince you she is happy. She is trying to convince herself. And she is desperately trying to provoke you into breaking, to shatter your composure and force you to reveal that you are, in fact, deeply affected. That would restore the familiar emotional landscape where she feels in control. Your job in this chaotic storm is deceptively simple and incredibly difficult. Stay silent. Do not break character. Your composure is the anvil upon which her desperation will be shattered. Every time you do not react, you don't like the photo, you don't question the guy. You don't respond to her coldness with hit. You subtly dismantle the illusion she is building. You communicate that her performances are not even worthy of a response. You are not a participant in this drama. You are a disinterested observer. This makes her feel smaller, more foolish, and more alone inside the narrative she has constructed. The walls of the theater she built begin to feel like the walls of a prison. It usually happens at night, in the quiet moments when the distractions of the day fade away and the thoughts get louder. This is when the real questioning begins, shifting. From what is he doing to what did I do? She starts wondering, did I push him too far? Was I too cold? Did I take him for granted? What if he's moved on for real and I've lost him for good? This is the mental trap your space has masterfully created. You have stripped away her emotional control. Women are addicted to understanding the emotional landscape of their relationships. It gives them a sense of security and power. When you become unreadable, when you offer no reassurance, no reactions, no clues, you take that control away. She cannot navigate a map that is blank. The silence becomes a riddle she cannot solve, and the not knowing is a special kind of torture. Is he angry? Is he hurt? Is he simply done? Is he with someone else? Every unanswered question becomes a source of intense emotional tension. It will be subtle, indirect, and deniable a way to reach out without risking the humiliation of direct contact. She might view your Instagram story within minutes of you posting it, a digital tap on the shoulder. She might send a random, out of the blue, message like, "Hey, how have you been?" pretending it's a casual afterthought. She might even like an old post of yours from months ago, a deliberate signal meant to stir the past. These are not actions of indifference. They are the white flags of a pride that is starting to falter, and each one is a silent admission that your silence is working, that the power is not in the performance, but in the profound, unshakable peace you have chosen for yourself. The war of attrition is over. The performances have exhausted themselves, the tests have yielded no data, and the desperate probes for a reaction have failed to pierce the calm facade you have maintained. The silence is stretched from a tactic into a state of being, and now it begins to yield its final, most profound results. This is the stage of reckoning and transformation, where the dynamic does not just shift but is fundamentally reborn. The energy she once spent on manipulating your emotions is now turned inward, and in that quiet introspection, she is forced to see not only you clearly, but also herself. The mirror you have held up through your stillness can no longer be avoided as you maintain this unwavering calm. Something remarkable and almost alchemical begins to occur in her perception of you. The man she once believed she could predict, whose reactions she could anticipate with near scientific accuracy, has vanished. In his place is a figure of quiet authority. Your silence is no longer interpreted as passive avoidance or petty punishment. She begins to feel its true nature. It is controlled. It is not the silence of someone who is hurt and hiding. It is the silence of someone who is whole and requires no external validation to feel that way. You are not ignoring her out of spite. You're protecting your peace. And on a deep, instinctual level, she feels the monumental difference. She senses that your absence is not a plea for attention, but a declaration of power. This realization is what begins to humble her, to dismantle the last vestiges of her pride, not with force, but with the sheer weight of its integrity. This is the point where the dynamic completes its inversion. When she finally reaches out, whether with a casual "Hey, how have you been?" or a more vulnerable admission, it is not a moment of victory to be seized, but a test of your newfound equilibrium. Most men fail here. They mistake her return for the finish line, flooding her with the warmth, reassurance, and emotional availability she once withheld. They revert to the old version of themselves, the one whose emotional state was dependent on her presence. This resets the entire cycle. Your reaction, therefore, is everything. You respond with calm, composure, warm, perhaps, but brief, emotionally neutral. And without the weight of expectation, you'll deliver the most powerful message of all. You communicate without a single word of explanation. I am not where you left me. You're not the man who would drop everything for a scrap of her attention. You are a man who has rebuilt his center of gravity within himself. This throws her completely off balance. She was expecting, on some level, to find the same emotionally accessible man, ready to be soothed by her return. Instead, she finds a man who is polite, grounded, and entirely self-possessed. This subtly terrifies her because it means the old version of you, the one she knew how to manipulate, is truly gone. This is where the final, genuine transformation occurs, not in her, but in you. The journey of silence was never truly about getting her back. It was a crucible for your own metamorphosis. It was about getting you back. You learned to live without the constant validation to find your worth, not in her reactions, but in your own actions. You learned that real strength is not loud and reactive. It is quiet and rooted. You learned the art of detachment, not as a cold, uncaring state, but as the ability to love without clinging, to care without losing yourself in the process. Whether she returns fully, offering a genuine reconciliation built on new respect, or she fades away, becomes irrelevant. The victory was never contingent on her choice. The victory was in your transformation. You have become a man who is emotionally sovereign. Your peace is permanent. Her moods no longer dictate your own. Her words no longer define your value. Her attention is no longer your currency. You have moved from being emotionally reactive to being emotionally responsible for only your own state. In the end, you realize that the silence was not a weapon to be used against her, but a tool for your own awakening. It was the highest form of communication, telling her and the world that you respect yourself too much to engage in emotional chaos, that your peace is non-negotiable, and that you would rather stand alone in your integrity than be half-loved in someone else's drama. You have become the embodiment of a lesson she never saw coming, that the man who can walk away peacefully, chooses his sanity over a desperate connection, is the man who is never forgotten. You win not by securing her, but by realizing you were never meant to be possessed in the first place. You are whole, and that wholeness is the ultimate prize. The man who masters silence has mastered himself, and a man who is master of himself has already won every battle that truly matters.